And what might be the one progressive thing that Andrew Tate has ever done, he went ballistic during an interview with Piers Morgan over the war between Israel and Hamas, or better characterized as the siege of Gaza by Israel. Let's take a look.
Let me ask you a question, because I want to understand your point of view.
It's actually my interview with you.
Yeah, but you tried to understand mine. I just want to understand your point of view. Mm-hmm. If I believed, or if Israel believed, that one of the people in your house was a terrorist and decided to destroy your entire house and kill your entire family, would you sit and say, well, maybe there was a terrorist inside, I accept that? Or would you be enraged? Genuine question.
I don't think you can take an individual person's response.
Well, it's a bunch of individual people in Gaza. There are people, individuals with thoughts and dreams and aspirations which are being annihilated. 15-year-old girls without legs because of cruise missiles.
Let's come to
they are individual people. They're not cattle, Piers.
Let's come to
They're people.
Right.
Now, I did not expect that turn. It's kind of similar to the argument that you heard Elon Musk made. Of course, this was before his trip to Israel. That even if you think that that Israel is justified in having a response after October 7th, that if your goals are to end Hamas, you're just creating more Hamas with all of the bombs, precisely because of the reasons that Andrew Tate is articulating there. Is that it's not, in most people's kind of moral framework, justified to have such an out of skew target to casualty ratio, target to civilian ratio, as what's been going on with Gaza, where we now have over 7,000 children killed, not even to mention all of the innocent men and women that are taking the tally up to about 1,500. And it is worth noting now that even Israel is acknowledging that the Hamas death toll, as it's been framed by the President of the United States, is accurate. Those numbers are accurate.
Yeah, look, I think I've made the exact same analogy as Andrew Tate. I'm a little embarrassed to be saying that before on the show, that, just because, if a group of carjackers or something, God knows there's plenty of that in my neighborhood, came and were hiding out in my apartment building, and the police response was to blow up my apartment building with me and all my neighbors in it, I wouldn't consider that fair, and the survivors would probably be pretty radicalized against the government. So Israel ought to take that into serious consideration. I read a piece by Eric Levitz in New York Magazine the other day that made some sense to me. And he says very clearly, it's not that Hamas has legitimacy, or that in an ideal world they would not exist. Ideally they would be gone, but can that goal be accomplished without so much death? Can it be accomplished basically at an acceptable toll, at an acceptable cost? And he argued pretty persuasively it can't. So then it becomes, what does Israel do? Of course, the state of Israel is not going to accept the condition that, well, they should just stop this effort and live alongside Hamas. But if you care about limiting civilian deaths, this seems very, and which I'm not saying Israel does, or to a sufficient degree, that seems pretty incompatible with the goal of getting rid of Hamas at this point.
People are saying that Israel does have a respect for life that is commensurate with kind of international standards, international law, and individual morals, even though we're kind of seeing evidence to the contrary. One of the State Department spokespersons was asked recently about this question. Do you think Israel is targeting their targets sufficiently? Do you think the civilian death toll is in violation of international law? And the response that these spokespeople routinely give is that, yes, that Israel doesn't target civilians, that Israel isn't responsible, that there's no accountability, there's no reflection on whether or not we should take note of the fact that the death toll here and the child death toll here is more than the combined child death toll of all of the conflict zones in the world this year to date in the last 2 months. I mean, clearly Israel isn't just acting in response to a terror event. They're doing more than every other actor in the world in a conflict zone combined. And so at a certain point, you can't say this is just what happens in war. War is war. This is par for the course. At a certain point, you have to acknowledge that what we're seeing here is disproportionate and wildly out of sync with what the norm is.
Well, I mean, it seems like it's outside the norm because, frankly, we don't see a lot of conventional war anymore. But I mean, we reduced entire cities in Germany and Japan to rubble. We killed thousands and thousands of people, women and children, non-combatants, in the course of our campaign to eliminate or force the surrender of a hostile regime. I mean, that is what they're doing. Hamas is a hostile regime. It is a siege of Gaza, but it's also a war between two organizations, Hamas and the State of Israel. That's what's happening, and so they're pursuing the aim of the surrender or elimination of the other organization.
Is Palestine a state? Does Palestine get to have statehood? Does Palestine get to have an army? Is it allowed to have an army?
I mean, they got to vote for the people in charge of them.
Is Palestine allowed to have a standing army?
They have combatants who attacked Israel.
Does Palestine have a standing army?
No.
It doesn't, and it is not allowed to because it's not allowed statehood or any of the self-determination that a state would have. That's what Palestinians are fighting for. They're fighting for the same privileges.
But they are fighting. You concede that.
Of course. Why shouldn't they?
Right. So it's a military conflict between.
No. Civil rights movement fought for their freedom. The South African apartheid fought for our freedom.
They're fighting with violence.
I hate to break it to you, but the Revolutionary War, South African apartheid, the end of slavery, all of that happened with violence.
And the Revolutionary War, the response in the Revolutionary War was that the country we were revolting against sent ships full of people to kill us, to kill the people leading the revolution. So that's what's happening here. That's conventional warfare. It's conventional warfare.
It's not conventional warfare.
No, it is absolutely. It is targeted at a hostile regime.
Right. So I totally get your point. Let me make my case for why it's not conventional warfare. It's not conventional warfare because for the last 17 years, the people of Gaza have been kept in an open-air prison, a literally walled area that's about the size of Queens. 2.3 million people live there. That it's characterized as one of the most densely populated places on the earth. Israel controls the flow of electricity, and the flow of water, and the flow of food into and out of Gaza. It also controls the flow of people. People cannot leave Gaza without permission. Gaza is not allowed to have its own airport. The people of Gaza are largely stateless and have trouble. The people of Israel, many of whom evacuated after October 7th. They had dual citizenship. Many of them are Americans who were able to come here or go to other parts of the world. They have access to airports and free egress and ingress. The people of Palestine do not have that. So to say that this is conventional warfare, where you have people that are pinned in conditions that are much closer to a Warsaw ghetto camp, and then to drop more pounds of bombs on them in a few-week period than we dropped on Afghanistan in a year and call that conventional warfare. Many people would consider that much more of a David and Goliath situation. We are taking a bound, unprepared, defenseless population and exterminating them. And now I think you're getting people like Andrew Tate, who, whatever his politics are, having empathy with the plight of Palestinians because you're seeing footage like this. You're seeing reporting that Israel is asking people repeatedly to evacuate and evacuate and evacuate, and then bombing the locations that they're evacuating to. Remember, initially they said, well, we're being humane because we told everybody to evacuate to the south. Bombed people while they were on the evacuation route that they were told they were safe. And then it started to bomb hospitals and civilian centers in the south, despite saying that those were safe zones. And now, they're basically admitting they're dropping these flyers from the air saying, you got to get out of here, we're about to bomb. But international humanitarian organizations and everyone is observing that there's simply nowhere else to go. Again, imagine if 17,000 people were killed in an area the size of Queens, and that 80% of all homes had been destroyed in Queens, that there was a wall around Queens, and the people there had no place to go.
I agree with you to describe this as a kind of David and Goliath conflict, although that's probably a bad metaphor because David famously defeats Goliath, right? But a very lopsided conflict with Israel has vastly more power and resources to inflict punishment on the Palestinians than the Palestinians do to inflict on Israel. That speaks to how unwise this course of action was from Hamas to provoke into a broader confrontation the state of Israel. I don't condone what's happening. I don't enjoy watching it happen. I don't want it to happen. I wish it would stop. I wish they would agree to live in peace, and I wish the Palestinians would get all of the rights due to them. I do. I absolutely wish for that. We're in a situation where that's not going to happen, and it's deeply frustrating to both of us.
All right. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.